The Powers Project.
Kyle, how are you, sir?
Hey, Kurt, I'm good. Thanks for having me in today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. For those who don't know, my guest today is Kyle Williams. I don't normally introduce my guests because I usually let them do it. But Kyle's a fan of the shows. In fact, he may be the only fan, but he's a fan of the show. And he reached out to me and talked about doing a segment, which, as you guys know, I've talked about doing myself before, which is having the everyday guy come on and talk about topics that are important to you and why they're important to you, and to get your point of view, because too often times we get people in here who are so-called experts or are experts in the area, and they have their own, their own thoughts and stuff, and so I like to reach out to the everyday person and go, what are your thoughts on this, and why do you believe this, and have you heard different viewpoints and things of that nature. One of the things I noticed with you right off the bat with talking with you is that you tend to be very open-minded and you do look at things from different perspectives. So that's going to make my job a lot easier today. So
that's really one of the things that kind of drew me to your show in the first place, is that I so often find myself looking at both sides of things and saying, I feel like I kind of maybe fall in the middle on this, and some things I lean a little left, some things I lean a little right, but a lot of times I find myself in the middle and trying to make heads or tails of, what does the average person think here? So when I reached out to you, it was really just kind of, you get a thought in your head and you think you just can't get it out. And so I thought, I just want to talk to this guy. Now, I had no idea that you were ever going to invite me onto the show to actually be a part of a segment like this. But I thought, you know what? It might be fun. I might learn a little bit about myself in the process, and it might help me form some maybe stronger opinions on some of these things that I do fall in the middle on. So it was kind of refreshing to hear your show and to hear something that wasn't completely biased. All the things you hear today, you turn on this channel, that channel, and you can immediately tell where their allegiances are and what their bias is. And it really just turns me off, and I don't want to listen to any of it. It doesn't matter which side it is. So it was very refreshing to hear somebody that had an open mind, had a lot of life experiences, and didn't necessarily always agree with the things that you might think that they do.
Right.
And so that's kind of what got the wheels turning and made me want to, take it a little further, have some better conversations.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad you did reach out, because, and one of the things that when we were talking, when I was getting to know you, is that you were saying that oftentimes people who are on one side or the other, because you're willing to look at both sides, because you want to see what's going on before just jumping on the bandwagon and without having the information that you need to make an informed decision, that they call you like a coward or something because you refuse to take a side. And it's like, if anything, I think you're more brave for doing that, because you aren't a sheep. You won't jump on one side or the other, and just because people are peer, like, it's like peer pressure, like back when you were in school, like, oh, you're gonna do this. Why? Because everyone else is doing it. Yeah, then that's basically what it is.
Exactly. And I've got friends that fall very hard one way or the other, and I'll ask them their opinion on things sometimes, so that it can be my journey of trying to identify what is somebody that really follows this side or really follows that side. How do they feel about this? Listen to their opinion, see what do I like or what do I not like about it. Every now and again, I'm somebody that I could say my mind has been changed on things. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there have definitely been times where I've said, my initial thought is I'm going to reject that idea because of maybe some of my upbringing or whatever different values that I might have. But then I say, okay, well, let me hear what this side has to say. They say something, I go, you know what? And I thought, maybe I should pat myself on the back for that, because it seems like today anybody will immediately reject the other side's opinion on things. They'll immediately reject this side's opinion and say, you got to go one way or the other. You can't be in the middle. And essentially, that's what I heard a lot, is that you're a coward if you're not taking a hard stance on this, that, or the other. And I thought, well, I don't think that that's how life is. And it's something that came a lot more into my view once I became a father. So you've got kids.
Yes.
I've got 3 kids, 9, 7, and almost 18 months. And so it's a completely different world than what I grew up in, what you grew up in, and trying to navigate that, say, okay, how am I going to show my kids how to act, how to think? And a lot of the opinions that I have now are definitely ingrained in me from what my upbringing was and my parents. And I grew up in the deep South, like South Mississippi.
Yeah.
So all of the stereotypes that come along with that, sadly, some of them are true, but a lot of them are not necessarily true. And that's one of the things I wanted to make sure I was able to maybe show people, that just because I was subjected to that kind of upbringing doesn't necessarily put me in this box that you might put somebody like that in. And I've been in Florida for about 20 years or so now, and it was a little bit of a change when I moved down here, but there's a lot of similarities. I mean, we're still technically in the South,
Right.
but growing up in Mississippi, seeing how the different cultures interact, and then moving down here and molding myself a little bit. When I go back to visit my family, people can tell a difference because I think that I've opened my mind a little bit more to more cultures that are out there, to different ways of thinking, and really just being open to hearing what each party has to say. Not so much politically, but a lot of times it is, but hearing what everybody has to say to help form an opinion, and maybe not so much move me out of the middle, but when it comes to something important, I think you do need to make a decision when it's something very important. But a lot of these things that are out there are not necessarily that meaningful. And you say, okay, well, how am I going to work with the rest of the relationships and the friendships that I have if I know what they think about this, and they're looking at me saying, well, I don't think that you believe that, or they expect me to believe whatever it is that they do.
Right.
So that's really what got me so interested in continuing to listen to the things that you brought up on your shows, because they were different subjects all the time. It wasn't just a political podcast or a sports podcast or fill in the blank. It was something that was very diverse, and every time I turned it on, I went, oh, this is kind of a neat subject. I kind of like what he has to say about this. And was surprised a couple times at different guests that you had on and different responses that you had, and some of the things that they said that kind of opened my mind. So that's kind of what brought us to this point now.
Well, that's the kind of show I've always wanted to have, and I'm fortunate enough to have such great guests that I have had on to talk about this array of topics, and I hope present it in a way like what you were saying, where it helps you to think about things and look at it from an open mind and at different perspectives. Because again, we have what we call is our truth, and you say, okay, well, this is my truth. So if it's my truth, you can't tell me it's not true. If it's my truth, I'm okay with that. But here's the thing: you only have a part of the truth, because you're only looking at it from one perspective. Until you can look at it from all perspectives, until you can look at it from the eyes of the people that you're against and see where they're coming from, you don't have the whole truth. You have a small portion of the truth, and that's not the truth. That's not the truth in whole. So while you may think that you know everything you need to know, you don't. And that it's that little knowledge thing where he says a little knowledge can be dangerous. Well, so can a little bit of truth. It can be dangerous.
Well, you said something pretty early on in one of the first shows I listened to. It said, if you've got a problem with me, it's not that you have a problem with me, you have a problem with the truth. So
Right.
asking questions to try to dig a little bit deeper to find out what's the truth here, and not a subjective truth, but an objective truth. I think you used the term a universal truth. What universal truths are out there? We're all going to die. I think that's one of the ones that you said. There's other things, but so many people have their own views, opinions, theories, concepts that they create, and it might be something completely new to the rest of us, but because somebody else has brought it to the table, now it's gospel. And it's very difficult for someone that grew up with some conservative values to immediately embrace those things. Now, I want to be open-minded, so I want to say, okay, well, let me hear what you got to say here. Is there any evidence based in fact or truth or science or what have you? Fill in the blank. If we're going to say science is the truth identifier, then we need to make sure that the concept you're bringing to the table aligns with those things that we all believe are true.
Right.
And the postmodernism talk that you gave was one of the ones that really just kind of set me on fire, in a good way. And I wasn't mad at anybody. I was thinking like, oh yes, this is exactly what I've kind of wondered. I actually at the time did not know of the term postmodernism until you started talking about it, and I went, okay, yes, I agree that there's a lot that can be gained from questioning what's out there. There's people that say question everything. I don't think everything's a conspiracy, but I think that if we question everything to identify what's true, that's great. And through that, if we're open-minded, we might find some new truths that are actually real truths. But we also might find some things through that where we can say, well, it's fine to have an opinion, but if you're going to come out and say this is the law now, then that's where it starts to fall apart for me.
Well, I think people, and what I've seen, especially on social media, I'll counter somebody's point that they made on one of their posts or something, because I truly believe, and I know there's people who don't agree with me, and I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
When I see something that I know is a lie or is inaccurate, I feel the need to say something. Now, do I? Probably not. But I don't like misinformation being put out there, because somebody's going to read that and go, oh, I agree with that, and not realize that it's wrong. And I don't normally do if it's just like someone who just posted something that thinks they know what they're talking about but doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But someone who deliberately lies, and there's these people on there who will post things just to get a rise out of people, almost as if they're so desperate for attention that
Mm-hmm.
they just put something out there because they know people are going to react.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll call them out on it, and they and of course most of them will get upset about that, and they'll go, well, everyone has opinion. I go, the thing is, this isn't my opinion, this is fact.
Mm-hmm.
This is my opinion. If it's my opinion, I'll state it as such and go, oh, well, I have a difference of opinion. However, what I'm telling you is fact, and there is a difference. And so people try to equate when you're making a statement that's factual and correct,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to say it's your opinion, and I won't let them do that, because
Mm-hmm.
there is a difference, and they both have a different value to them. Now, you're married. How does your wife feel about you being so open-minded? Is she open to that herself, or does she go, oh, just pick a side too?
Well, no, she's probably more, I don't know if liberal is the word I want to use, but she would probably agree with me on that. She's very compassionate. She always says, oh, give them the benefit of the doubt, sort of thing. So she really, when people say my better half, she really does make me better. We joke about it all the time, and I'm like, you're just better. You're just better than me in pretty much every way. You're so much better. Now, when it comes to how we're a couple and how we're parents together, I think that it's a great thing, because she is a little bit more patient sometimes and slower to act, and but together we're able to look at our kids and say, okay, how do we want our kids to react to this type of situation, this type of interaction? And so far we've been pretty proud of what we've done with our kids, and really just kind of want to give them a good example. But she does not necessarily push me too hard to pick a side, so I appreciate that.
Right.
So now it does feel good when she agrees with me on something. So I think I was telling you we read this book. We've been married we actually just had our 12th wedding anniversary.
Oh, nice.
And we read this book together called The 5 Love Languages. A lot of people have heard of it before, and we were pretty new in our marriage when we read it, and I thought, oh gosh, it was kind of some eye-opening things to basically help identify how do different people communicate and feel love. Feel love, show love. And I found out pretty quickly that the way I felt and showed love was not the same way she felt and showed it. And I won't get into all the details of that, but by being able to figure that out for her, it really gave me a little bit of a different perspective on other people. So her saying, give them the benefit of the doubt. You don't know what their life experiences were. You don't know what they've been through. You don't know what they're going through right now. That it made me slow down a little bit and say, okay, I really want to hear what other people's thoughts are. I really want to know what's going on that's helped form your opinions on these sort of things. Because I think that really your experiences are what have helped form what you believe on something. If you've been through something and you've lived it and you've felt all of the emotions and the things that come along with it, it's probably going to be pretty difficult to change your mind on that because you've lived it. So if you haven't lived it, the best you can do is, investigate that. Ask people about what it was that they experienced. And so that's what I started to do a little bit more. And I want to say it's helped our marriage. And I think that it's helped a lot of my other friendships because, I am kind of quick on the draw sometimes. And it's helped me slow down a little bit to say, okay, well, hang on a second. I'm not going to immediately reject what you're saying, but tell me more. And if we can find possibly a happy medium, which I think is completely foreign today. It's we feel this way, we feel that way. And can't we just all get along? I mean, it sounds so cliche, but I really do truly think that is what we need to be able to move forward in a way that it's. I hate hearing like, oh, we're so divided, but we are.
Well, I think here's the thing: we are divided in a sense that we have this belief that one side is way over here and the other side is way over here, and it's a falsehood that's been delivered to us to make us believe that, so we don't come together. So it's that whole divide and conquer thing, and through our politicians, through our media, this has been going on for quite some time now. Everything that we talk about is so volatile that it's like, you can't say anything without people just like jumping all over you about it, and no one's stopping to think, because I don't want to even start with who I believe started this whole thing, but like we can't even say we're wrong. We're not allowed to say we're wrong. We're not allowed to say we're sorry. We're supposed to stick to our guns no matter what. And that kind of, and people believe that's a strength. And it's not. It's a weakness. It shows just how weak you really are mentally, emotionally, that you can't admit when you're wrong. And I think as a society, from what I'm seeing, that's where many people are. If I give in and say I'm wrong, and and here's the thing: when you said, that you're slow to act, I think that's wise, because I'm slow to act too.
I'm not. I used to be really quick to act.
Right. But now you think about things, and that's the wise way to do things. Because here's the thing: I hate being wrong, and so if I do like you did, I was the same way. Oh yeah, well, blah 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 blah, and then somebody would come back and go, yeah, but you didn't think about this, and I go, oh man, he's right, and I'm wrong. Then I had to apologize and say, you're right, I'm sorry, and but at least I was willing to look at it and go, am I wrong? And put my beliefs to the test. See if it holds water, And that's the thing, because our beliefs may or may not still hold water. Most people are afraid to challenge them, though. And you said something earlier about using science as a truth identifier, because science will go with what's known at that time. So right now, like you said, one of the examples I said, absolute truths or universal truths are, one day we're all going to die. Well, there may come a time where that's no longer the truth. And does that mean I lied? No, at this point in time, it is the truth. So, but like science, that truth has to change if someday, science comes up with a way to live forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we could still argue that we might run into the sun or something like that. Who knows? But until that time, that is an absolute truth or a
Mm-hmm.
universal truth for us that we are going to die. And but as like science, when that no longer holds water, it needs to change. Give up that belief and go with what the new evidence shows, and go with that, and
Yeah.
instead of hanging on to that because I believed this my whole life, and
Mm-hmm.
and they're afraid to let go of it, seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really reminds. So I'm a man of faith. I'm a Christian. I play music at the church I go to, and pretty actively involved there. And so we're trying to bring the kids up the same way. And so you hear some funny questions sometimes from kids when they're hearing these things for the first time. I mean, if you really back up and you think about a lot of faiths and what it's rooted in, if you're just telling that to somebody that's never heard it before, they go, especially if they're 7.
Yeah.
I I don't know if I told you the story about the day that she probably was about 5 at the time, and she says, "Daddy, so and so at school in kindergarten, he said the F word." I went, "Whoa, really? 5-year-old saying the F word at school? That's not good. Don't do that. That's not a good word to say." And she says, "Well, why is it a bad word?" And I thought, oh boy, parenting moment. Don't mess this up. Don't F this up. So I was like, well, sweetie, it means something ugly, and it's not something that kids or should say. Most adults maybe shouldn't say it, but it's just an ugly word. And I thought that's a good enough answer.
Yeah.
And she says, well, who invented the F word? So at the time, the older sister, she's about 7, she turns around on the couch and she goes, "Oh, Jesus invented the F word." I'm like, what? What? Whoa, stop, no. Jesus did not, what are you talking about? He did not invent the F word. And and she's like, "Yeah, Dad, he invented everything, Daddy." And I'm like, okay, I like where your head is on this, but let's take a step back and try to unpack some of this and identify, I don't know who invented this, who didn't invent it, but it's funny how kids can look at things because of never being exposed to a certain piece of information before, learning it, and then immediately accepting it sometimes, which is a scary thing. So I feel like we picked the right one, and really believe that. But I want to make sure that when it comes to all of the other things in life, that I'm helping, grow my family in a way that's going to be respectful, that's going to be kind, rooted in love. If you're doing good things for other people, and it's not a selfish motive, you're really trying to help people, and you're trying to be kind and use the golden rule, then how can you go wrong? And I feel like we're so often we're trying to be distracted from that constantly. And how do I make sure that we're not distracted from it, but also not getting in my own way? So is there a universal truth that hasn't been identified yet? Almost definitely. And when it does come around, being able to, like you said, being able to say, okay, well, we've identified this to no longer necessarily be true, and we have to move forward with a new way of looking at things. There would still be people, even though it's been completely debunked. Oh, this is not true anymore. We've proven it. We're going to move forward. All of the people that have this belief over here, they're not going to give it up.
No, they won't.
And that's what's so scary, is that, okay, if we are evolving as a civilization, then we have to embrace change that has been verified. What was the phrase? Trust but verify.
Right.
So I like to be a trusting person. I don't want to be gullible, and I don't want to be somebody that's going to get taken advantage of. But if I can verify it, then that gives me some confidence that we're going in the right direction.
Well, I'll say with my experience in life, I like to say I'm skeptical, and because I've seen too much where I used to, like give people the benefit of the doubt, and I still do, but I'm skeptical while I do it. But I don't. I don't become cynical about it, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the difference. A good healthy amount of skepticism is good because then you can step back, look at things, and go, all right, is this real or not?
Mm-hmm.
If you're cynical, even if it's real, you're not going to see it because you don't want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to find fault with everything that's said to you,
Mm-hmm.
and I think too oftentimes we don't understand the very things that we're using, the cliches that we use, like well, this is my truth,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't understand what this is my truth, what that means, and we think that means, oh well, this is my truth, it's whole truth, so no one can tell me I'm wrong, and it's like, no, that's not what that's your truth. That's not what that means,
Mm-hmm.
because oftentimes your truth could be a universal lie, but to you it's a
Mm-hmm.
truth. And so you have to have the wherewithal to look within yourself and to challenge your
Mm-hmm.
beliefs and see if it really is true,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's just true to you because you like the way it sounds or the way it plays out. So,
It's funny. It's like I don't know if it's genuine or tongue in cheek when somebody says "speak your truth," and I'm
yeah,
saying, "Well, are you enabling them to just say a bunch of stuff that is nonsensical,
yeah,
or are you kind of tongue in cheek saying like, oh yeah, speak your truth," kind of thinking like, well, you might be a little off, but I'm not going to get in your way, so call it an opinion, call it what it is. It's
right.
an opinion.
Right, exactly. Because and sometimes, and again, sometimes it's not even an opinion. Sometimes it's an outright lie
Mm.
because they're not being true to themselves. And that's, I think, I've talked about this before. That one of the challenges, or one of the issues I see with people, is that they're not being honest with themselves. This whole body positive movement that they have out there, saying, "Oh, I'm 400 pounds and I'm happy and I love myself," and I'm saying, "No, you don't."
Mm.
That you are saying that's my truth. I'm happy with myself, and I'm saying you're lying to yourself,
Yeah.
and your actions show it. And I know people can go, "Well, that's awful presumptuous of you," and no, it's not presumptuous. Watch what people do. Their actions will always give them away.
Oh yeah.
And there's no way that if you loved yourself, you would do the things that would cause you ill health or cause you an early death.
Mm-hmm.
You just wouldn't do that because you go, "Hey, I love myself and I want to take care of myself. I want to feel good. I don't want to hide behind this body and this image and this facade I'm putting out there because I want people to leave me alone because I don't like people telling me I'm overweight."
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I understand where they're coming from. I've been Not only have I been overweight, I'm overweight right now, and it's because I put.
But you could also bench press a car, so I mean, there's
yeah,
that.
well, that's great, but then I have to bench press my ass out of bed too. But here's the thing: I had put it out there because I'm writing a book, and one of the things I'm writing and what I'm doing is I want to get into best shape of my life. Well, I put that out in the universe, and it's either me or the universe. I can't tell you which right now, and maybe I'll figure it out. But as soon as I put something out in the universe says, "Oh, let's see how serious you are." So
Yeah.
I thought, okay, I'm in okay shape right now. I'll get in the best shape of my life. I'll be good to go. Well, the universe decided, no, that's too easy. I'm going to put you in the worst shape of your life.
Oh yeah.
And so that's when I started having problems with my shoulder, problems with my knee, problems with my sleep. I have never had problems with my sleep in my life, never. And I'm like, where the hell is this coming
Mm-hmm.
from? And it's affected everything that I've been doing. It affects the way I eat, and so not to make excuses, but part of that is like, well, people will go, well, are you going to just give up? And I go, no. What I'm going to do is take care of my health. I'm going to figure out what's wrong and take care of it.
Yeah.
Then I'll be on. So it's not like, oh, well, I'm not working out right now, or I'm not eating right, so you're not doing the things that you need to do to get in the best shape of your life. I am actually doing the things. I need to focus on what's causing these issues and take care of them. Then I can move forward from there.
Mm-hmm.
And people often think, oh, well, you're not doing it because you're not exercising. And all I can tell you is, like, listen, when you have 2 hours of sleep after 3 days, you don't have a lot of energy to exercise.
Yeah.
You know?
You're talking about this, if you're going to get in the best shape of your life, you got to be in the worst shape of your life first, sort of thing. And so I played tennis in college. It wasn't like university levels, junior college, but it was a fun group. And I thought, as a high school tennis player, I thought I was pretty good. Every 18-year-old that is somewhat athletic thinks they're probably really good.
Right,
at it.
right.
So I thought I was really good. And I get there first day of practice in college. Hey, I'm on the college tennis team. Kind of thought I was somebody. And the coach comes over and she repositions the racket in my hand, not the way that I hold it. And she goes, "Okay, first off, you're holding the racket wrong." And I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to hit the ball now? I've never held the racket. You're telling me I got to hold the racket like this? Yeah, you got to hold the racket like that. You've been holding it like a frying pan the whole time. And I thought, how am I supposed to be? I'm going to be terrible. And first day of practice, I was mad. I was mad because now I didn't give up and I didn't throw her advice and whatnot out the window because she was a pretty strict coach. And I knew that she knew what she was doing. I'd seen results of her working with other people before, and I thought, okay, I'm at a crossroads here. I can either be this arrogant kid that's going to say, you know what, lady, I'm going to do it my way, or I could take her advice and try to see if it improved me. And it did. It took about a month. I mean, I stuck with it, and I was practicing more and started realizing, oh gosh, I guess I am practicing a lot more than I was before, kind of honing it all in. But I had to get down to the absolute foundation of the game to be able to improve from there, which was the grip on your racket. And I thought, well, if I can make a little simple change like that, imagine the other things that you could do in your life. You made a little tweak, even if it's on the fundamental level, and then now you're building on something that's a lot more solid.
Right. And that's a good point, because if you just, you may think you know a lot, and even at my age, and even the things I've gone through, I listen to everybody because I go, maybe they figured out something I didn't. Even if they're young, maybe they're smarter than me,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly I've met plenty of people who are smarter than me, even younger people, and so I do listen to them as if maybe there's something there. Let's see if what they're saying is true. And very similar to that, when I had Jeff Magruder, who was the world's record holder in the bench press at the 242-pound weight class. This man's chest was so huge, it's almost comical. Like he could
Mm-hmm.
flex his upper chest, and I would be able to set that glass on this chest.
Oh my God.
Like it came out. It was like a shelf. That's how big his chest was. And he said, your grip is too narrow, and he showed me how to redo my grip, and so it took me, like you said, about a month, but then all of a sudden my bench started to go up, and quite a bit, and then I felt safer with it as well. Now, it's easy for me to listen to Jeff Magruder because Jeff Magruder was a world record holder, and I'm
Totally.
going, well, he's totally going to know more than me.
Mm-hmm.
But I also learned things from guys in the gym that weren't world record holders. And yet they had found little things that they tweaked and said, oh, try this just a little bit. See how that feels for you. Now, I will tell you this. Almost in every case, nobody came to me and said, oh, try this, it's better. They said, try this and see how it works for you.
Sure.
And that's how I think we should approach people when we, if we think, well, we might have a better way or a better idea about things. I like to talk to people and go, well, think about this. Try it out. See if it works for you. And that's why, when I have guests on the show and I tell people, at the end of the show, don't listen to me, don't listen to my guest as far as believing us just because we said it. Listen to what we said and then go give it a try. See if it works.
Yeah.
Think about the things that we're talking about and see if they work for you, because you might find they do. You might find they don't. But don't just believe me because I have a podcast, and it would be silly of me to think anyone does.
Mm-hmm.
But there might be someone out there who goes, oh well, he's got a podcast. He said it. He's older. He must know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I do, but maybe I don't.
Well, I mean, that's what's different about you, because a lot of these podcast guys out there, there's a lot of great ones, but there's a lot of them out there that they do believe that what they're saying is gospel, and that if you don't believe them, well then,
Right.
good luck, because you're following the wrong direction.
That's one reason why I love Joe Rogan so much, because he's not one of those guys. In fact, he keeps saying, "Oh, I'm just a moron. Don't listen to me." And obviously, he's a much smarter person than most people even give him credit for. In fact, let's talk about that a little bit, because
Sure.
we had the opportunity. I had an extra ticket, and I had the opportunity to take Kyle to the Joe Rogan concert last weekend, and it was
It was incredible.
it was
It was the best comedy show I've ever been to in my life.
I never laughed so much, so hard for so long. I mean, it was such a great show, and we lucked out because it was that night that he ended up started to get sick. And
Right,
The
right.
next morning, he was sick and got COVID, and then had to cancel a couple of shows. So we really, I mean, I don't want to say,
This made national news, by
yeah,
the way.
exactly. Well, because of where his stance is on COVID and on getting the shot, the vaccination, and he's not anti-vaccination. He's saying it should be a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And we can argue whether it should be a choice or not. At this point in time, I say I believe it should be a choice because of the numbers that come out, because of what we know to be true. That I think that if it ever became a point where we go, okay, this is like the Black Plague, then I say, okay, it's no longer a choice. You have to get the shot because now, by not doing so, you can affect the rest of the society, and your rights don't trump the safety of people in your community just because you go, I don't want a shot. Well, that's too bad. Then you need to be quarantined, and if you don't like it, go join another society that allow you to do that, because you shouldn't be able to put other people's lives at risk because you want to make a bad choice.
Yeah, I think that right now it's, I don't necessarily think that it should be mandated, but I think that the arguments that a lot of the anti-vaccine crowd are using are pretty, I don't know, pretty weak. Oh, I don't want my freedoms taken away. I'm like, we're not asking you to.
That's a weak one.
We're not asking you to, shave your head and get a, tattoo on your face.
I'm more about the fact that they're like, well, they've lied to us, and they have lied to us. Fauci's lied about having the need for masks. Now I know why he did it, but he shouldn't have. He should have just treated people like adults and said, look, yes, we need masks, but I'm asking you not to rush out and get masks. Of course, the way we are in this country, we're self-centered. We only think about ourselves. But he should have said, I'm asking you not to rush out, rather stay home and let the frontline workers get the masks because they need them most right now, because they're the ones who are going to be in the middle of all this and at the greater risk. And that's what we should have done. Acted like adults, treated everyone like an adult. But this government doesn't tend to do that. And I don't mean this particular government that we have right this second. I'm talking about that's how politicians have treated Americans throughout. That's just like Area 51 UFOs.
Yeah.
Oh, now you're finally going to come out after all these years. What has it been, 70 years or more? And you're going to say, oh, by the way, there are UFOs. Oh, no shit, I didn't know that. It's like, of course there are. We know that. But you can't. You thought, oh, well, we can't tell them because we have to protect them from themselves. Instead of treating Americans like adults, like they should have, and said, hey, this is what we found. But
And it's things like that, and there's been thousands of other conspiracies and different things that we found out later down the road that they had not necessarily been giving us the whole truth, that has caused such a unhealthy skepticism. A healthy skepticism, like you were saying, I think that's good.
Right.
But an unhealthy skepticism to, it doesn't matter what comes out. There's immediately going to be somebody that is running with the contrarian view of it. Doesn't matter what it is.
right.
And that's the thing that's really, I think, set us back a little bit. Information gets from point A to point B way faster than it did, before the internet was around. And now something happens in 10,000 miles away. We know about it 10 seconds later, and everybody's got an opinion on it, and somebody's screaming some sort of foul one way or the other. So whether it is COVID, whether it's, fill in the blank, I think that moving forward, if we would take things a little bit slower and try to understand what the other person was saying. Now, a lot of my friends, are probably, if they listen to this, they're going to be like, all right, first off, you need to practice what you're preaching. Because I'm not saying I got this perfect and I got this right. But I have tried to rein myself in a lot when it comes to, reacting quick to things like that, and being able to see what's going to have the most positive outcome. So, be more positive, be more grateful for the things that are around me that I'm blessed with, and try to use those for good, sort of a thing. It's funny, I was talking to someone last night, and I don't know how it came up, but we got to talking about superheroes and Batman, and I said, Batman is probably one of the coolest superheroes because he didn't really have any superpowers. He was just really rich. But on the other side, he was extremely arrogant.
Right.
To think, you know what? I don't need any of y'all. I'm just going to go do this all on my own, rogue, against anybody's rules. So, obviously, it's a comic. It's fiction. But, we should come together rather than just all going rogue and having our own opinions that can't be challenged, that can't be broken. And when they are, we're going to immediately come up with some reason of why we're not wrong. So, hey, I'm the first person to say, if you challenge me on something, and you expose that, hey, damn it, I'm wrong. I'm wrong here.
Right.
I will fess up to it. Now, not without a little bit of a fight, but I do want to make sure that I'm trying to better myself, and
Right.
and I don't think that we really can better ourselves if we don't challenge ourselves. I mean, there's a pretty popular proverb, iron sharpens iron. Proverbs 27:17. I hope I got that right. Iron sharpens iron, thus one man sharpens another. And that's so true, I mean, we can really kind of hone ourselves in, because we all kind of have a lot of the same end goals that we're looking for. We want to be happy. We want to have some type of love in our life. We want to have some type of joy in our life, and we want to feel secure, whether that's, and it doesn't necessarily have to be money to be able to deliver a lot of those sort of things. But if we're all pursuing the same things, it's kind of like the Nash equilibrium. Do you ever see the movie A Beautiful Mind?
Yes.
Russell Crowe, Nash equilibrium, and the image that they have in the movie is where everybody's going after. They're at a bar and everybody's.
You mean Kevin Spacey?
Kevin Spacey?
Yeah.
Russell Crowe was in Beautiful Mind. Right?
I don't think so.
I think you're thinking of the one where he has the affair with a high school girl.
Yeah, that's A Beautiful Mind.
Is it?
I think so.
Maybe I got the movie wrong. Anyway, it's the one where he's supposed to be John Nash from, that ended up being a Nobel Prize winner, and he was a little bit crazy and suffered from some paranoid schizophrenia and things of that sort. But when he came up with his thesis on Nash equilibrium, it was really around everybody was at the bar. They were all focused on the attractive blonde, and he could kind of see that if they're all going after the same goal here, then either maybe one of them wins or possibly none of them win. And so it ended up being that by focusing on what was in their best interest is what helped everybody have a positive outcome. So, focus on yourself, but don't let the focus you have on yourself selfishly take away from others.
Right. And that's a great lesson. And
did you look the movie up, and was I wrong?
No, I was.
Oh, I was about to immediately have to admit that I was wrong.
I was wrong. I'm sorry. What was the name of the movie?
It was beautiful. It was Beautiful something or another. Yeah, I think it was.
Okay, maybe it was. Oh well. I'm glad I checked it out because everybody goes, "No, you're wrong, Kurt." It's like, okay, yes, I was wrong. I forget what it was called. I thought it was A Beautiful Mind, but apparently not. But yeah, but that's a good story.
I think it was called American Beauty.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the name of it.
All right, close enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you're right. We shouldn't allow our selfishness to take away from helping others. But here's the thing. And again, social media has its positives. and yet the negatives are so damning. I mean, because you see people like it's almost like who was it? Orwell? No, Orwell. No, it was what's his name? The artist who said everybody will have their 15 minutes of fame. Um, it'll come to me anyway. It's almost as if people are grandstanding so that because everyone knows that there are camera phones out there now and this stuff will go viral if I just act a fool in public. And so now you're at these city council meetings and people are up there screaming and yelling like fools. You're not even acting like an adult.
Right.
But that's not what you care to do. You want to grandstand so everybody can take a video of you and put you on YouTube or Facebook or whatever and go viral so that you get your 15 minutes of fame. You want attention. That's what it is. And that's hurt us because now we have these disingenuous actors who are standing up making comments or making statements and pushing a false narrative just so they can get their fame and get their attention that they so desperately want. And it hurts us.
I think that there's some pros and cons to that whole idea, though, of the camera phones and everybody's immediately can be viral from whatever they were doing. I think it also helps control a little bit of people's behavior. If you're somewhere and you have this, feeling that I think I want to act out in some form or another, but then you remember everybody's got a video, a camera phone that they can take video, it might help control you from saying, you know what, I'm not looking to become famous for some stupid reason today. I'm going to rein in some of my feelings on this and not act the fool.
Right. But then again, on the other end of that spectrum, you have the ones who have the cameras who will act the fools because they know they have the camera. And so they'll say things that they know they wouldn't normally say because they would get their ass beat if they did if they didn't have that damn camera. And all of a sudden they become very brave and they it's like, oh well, hit me, because they know what's going to happen.
Yeah, they're just instigating it.
Right, exactly. And I see this with the Karen video sometimes. There's a lot of Karens out there, and I'm the first one. I love a Karen video, and there's a lot of Karens out there, and they're being exposed for the first time, and I'm like, it's about damn time because they've been around forever and ever and getting away with shit for generations. They've been getting away with this. All of a sudden, now they're being brought to light. But on the other side of that, now you see these younger kids who are wise to technology and how to use it, and so they'll only push record after they've already instigated something.
Yeah.
And then see the woman get upset about something.
And you didn't see what happened
right,
to
exactly.
to get them there.
And to me, that's just as just as bad, if not worse, than somebody a woman going off for no reason because she's used to getting her way all the time.
I'll tell you, I've got a bone to pick with this whole Karen culture because my name is Kyle. And somehow or another, I don't know how, Kyle became the male equivalent to the Karen. Well, good. I'm glad that you don't think that.
No, I heard Darren, and I've heard a couple.
I like that. Let's run with that.
Yeah, Karen and Darren.
I thought, wait a minute. I don't want to be. No, you can't associate that with me.
And and it really is unfair because when I had Carl Kreisman on, we talked about that, and you said it's unfair to women who are named Karen who aren't like that. You know, so it really is, and that must suck. And so I said we should probably name it something that only one person in the world has that name.
Yeah.
But anyway, so here's what I'd like to do. So having you on the show today, I wanted to take, like I said, I know obviously you don't represent every person out there that, and I don't want to even say average because you're not average, and most people out there aren't average.
I tell my wife that all the time.
What's that?
That I'm not average.
Yes, well, you're not. So, but, someone who... that speaks for, God, even commoners doesn't sound right, but for the common man and woman out there who, that you're not in the limelight. You have a job that you do. You come home. You have a family. You raise your kids. The whole 9 yards. And I wanted to get different points of views from people who live that kind, just a regular life like everybody else, and go, what topics matter to you? Why do they matter to you? And what's your position on them? And what I'd like to do today is go over some of those topics that you find matter to you, because too often we have these mouthpieces out there that will say, "Oh, well, the people don't even care about this." And I'm like, "Yeah, they do actually." And just because you don't like the fact that they're talking
Mm-hmm.
about it doesn't mean that you can shut them down and say, "Oh, people don't care," because we wouldn't be talking about it if they didn't care.
Right.
So, with that being said, do you have let's say what's one of your most important topics out there that you really think a lot about and that you have an opinion on that you'd like to get out there?
Well, I don't necessarily want to prioritize them, but I'll tell you
Right.
the one that's come into my view more recently and more relevantly is that I've got my oldest, actually both of them, they were in part of a swim league during summer. And then after the summer swim league was up, the older one said, I want to continue to do this. So she tried out for the swim team. She's 9. She's an okay swimmer. She's nothing special, but she did have a little bit of success in her swim meets that she did. And it was really, really neat as a father to be able to see her working so hard in the practice, how much she improved, and then get into competition time and like flipping the switch and saying, it's go time, baby, I'm ready to do this. And seeing that fire in her eyes from a competition standpoint, saying like, wow, this is really kind of neat. Now I'm wondering if my parents saw me the same way that I'm seeing my kid. And so then it's been in the news, a lot of this how are we going to navigate the different trans athletes that are out there, and having boys and girls sports purposefully segregated for a lot of different reasons, and they kind of always have been. And there are some scientific reasons behind why we do that from a healthy competition standpoint. And then it gets real political, and you get this state and that state coming out saying, well, no this, no that. And all I could think was, if my 9-year-old was in, now it's not like she's swimming in the Olympics right now, but maybe she's working towards something like that. Who knows? She could be somewhere or somebody someday when it comes to that. And she's now faced with competition which is not necessarily what everybody else would categorize as fair. If she's racing against other kids that are just much bigger than her, but they're the same age, and hey, look, they just happen to have this physical advantage. Well, then, hey, that's kind of life right there.
Right.
There are some sports where the physical advantage is they try to level that. If you think about wrestling and boxing and fighting type competitions, you're not going to have a 250-pound dude going against a 130-pound dude. Why? Doesn't matter what their age is or anything of that sort. Now, it does matter if it's two men fighting one another, or if it is a man that's way larger or smaller than the other, because we want to have the ultimate goal to have fair competition.
Right.
And so when I think about my kid being in some type of sports and athletic event where she's competing against a bunch of other kids, and then all of a sudden we add someone else to the group, which I feel like I would be so careful in how I say this. I don't want to offend anybody, but I just kind of want to be real at the same time.
Right.
I want my child racing against other little girls is what I would want. And I understand that there are different circumstances that would cause people to have a desire to identify differently, or to choose to go through different biological events to change what their biology is, their chemistry, have additional substances that they take to either suppress estrogen, increase testosterone, or in the other half to suppress the testosterone and things of that sort. So if you've got a boy racing against a little girl, and let me tell you, when I'm watching the little boys, the 9-year-old boys race against 9-year-old boys, and you look at what the times were, and then you look at the 9-year-old girls, even the fastest 9-year-old girl would have gotten smoked by the slowest 9-year-old boy. And I'm going, wow. At one point, and back to Joe Rogan, one of the comedians had a really kind of funny bit that he said about that. I won't blow his spot up, but he was talking about a guy that was into cycling, and he had commonly been 643rd in the world, and this, that, and the other, and he came in 142nd in this competition, and then all of a sudden he went through a gender identity. I mean, what's the technical term when you actually go through the transition?
They call it transition.
Yeah.
But here's the problem with transitioning, is that there is no one thing that you have to do to say you've transitioned.
Right.
You only have
Totally.
to say, this is who I identify as, and that's, and that could be that,
Right.
and that's the end of it, and therein lies, a big problem right there.
Right.
I do have a question though about your 9-year-old daughter, because usually girls and boys can do play sports together because they haven't gone through puberty yet. So
Right.
so the boys haven't had the advantage of having that testosterone kick in and all the advantages that comes at least physically with a biological male. So and many times the girls beat the boys when they're still 9 years old. But you're saying that at your daughter's school or at her competition that these boys are even advanced at 9
Yeah.
before they hit puberty?
And that was one of the things that made me kind of question, when is a transition considered more or less okay because of the amount of time you've lived with certain amounts of testosterone in your body, and your muscle fibers have changed through that whole process. But I think it comes down to the type of sport. So when I played Little League Baseball, I think that a lot of little girls just didn't have an interest in Little League Baseball. So, I mean, there was a couple of girls that played in it, and they were like, hey, this is the team that has the girl on their team. And there wasn't typically a huge difference at 9 and 10 years old of how they performed, but there was just a less of an interest. So when you've got a sport where you've got a really big pool, no pun intended, of participants that are in it, we're not talking about just like a team sport here where you've got a few people on a team. We're talking about individual events where you've got a bunch of this gender and that gender. And so I think that it logically made the most sense to have them separated into different groups that way, because they did it by age, and it was typically like 1 to 2 year differences, 9 and 10-year-olds, or in some cases it was just 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, so forth and so on.
Right.
So when it's an individual sport, I think that it does still matter. When it's a team sport, basketball, baseball, what have you, that it might not be as much of an issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, I'd have to look more into that, because I know there are female wrestlers like that would wrestle guys and beat the boys. These girls. But those are outliers too. If we're being honest. And in fact, even Malcolm Gladwell talks about the difference of being like a 9-year-old and being born in January as a 9-year-old, and being born maybe September, October, November at 9 years of age, and the advantage that the one who's born first, has an advantage, because now you have 9 or 10 months over that 9-year-old, which is a huge difference at those ages. So, it's very hard to make it completely, fair, if you will.
Yeah.
It's just you can only do so much to divide people up before you have 9-year-olds who were born in September, 9-year-olds who were born in October, which you just can't have you wouldn't have a competition that would work that way.
Right.
So, but yeah, I agree with you. And being an athlete all my life and being able to compete, it would be devastating to not be able to compete. However, with that said, I think the only answer is to create competition within a transgendered competition, because it is unfair, and the science proves that. I mean, and this is why, and I challenge anybody, I don't care who you are, anybody who hears this episode, anybody who sees this episode, if you believe that a trans female is a biological female, one, you don't know science. Two, find any scientist or so-called scientist who has this belief and give them contact with me, because I would love to sit them down with a real biologist and explain to me how a trans female is a biological male, because to me, or a biological female, because if she was a biological female, then there wouldn't be no need to transition to begin with.
Right.
So none of that makes sense. But the reason why these people who are pushing this false narrative, you don't ever see them on any shows debating, is because they know the science is against them. So they pick platforms that they can just put their BS out there, hoping that people will buy into it. But they'll never sit down and debate with people who know, because they know that they'll just be decimated in any type of discussion that they have, because there is no science. It's pseudoscience.
Well, you know this because I've shared it with you, but for anybody listening here, when it came to that specific subject of trans athletes, again, I'm not coming at this from an angle of hate or anything. I'm trying to get just from understanding. And so I reached out to someone I know that's a trans woman, and wanted to find out kind of what some of her opinions were on the matter. And I felt like who better to ask than somebody in that community, so that I can, I don't want to be labeled as a transphobe or anything like that. I just want to help me understand where we're coming from here. And if we can have some scientific justifications, then that's when I'll be willing to accept your stance and go along with it and support it, champion it, if it's something that is going to be better for us as a people. And what I found there was quite simply that it was based in subjective emotion and not so much any objective truth.
Right.
And that was the thing that I had, I think, a lot of difficulty with in the conversation, because I would come back with a lot of details that were based in biology and science and things of that sort, and the responses typically were trying to distract me from the questions that I just asked.
Right. That's exactly what they do.
Well, I'm going to tell you why this is also bad for this other group of people. And, well, no. We're not talking about what group of people is it good or bad for. We're talking about the subject in question. Should we have trans women? That would be a man that's now a woman, right?
Right.
Should we have a trans woman fighting against other biological women in MMA?
Right.
In boxing. I mean, I don't remember the girl's name, but
Fallon Fox.
Yeah, cracked the girl's skull. I mean, it could have been a fatal circumstance.
And therein lies, the evidence, if nothing else, is that it debunks their whole premise that these trans females don't have an advantage. The results that you're getting from the sports that they're competing in shows they have a distinct advantage. You don't go into a sport and when you were a male and not even be in the top 100 in the world or 200, and all of a sudden you come and you're the world champion.
Yeah.
You don't do that unless you have a distinct advantage, because now you're saying the difference between men and women are so great. There's this great divide, and this is the same group that wants to push like there is no divide, that men and women are the same. You're mixing up your arguments now. Which one is it? You can't have it both ways, and they don't even realize that they're doing that. They don't realize by making one statement, they're debunking their own statement, other statement that they were trying to make, that there is no difference between men and women. Well, obviously there is, according to this statement that you've made now. And they don't see the ridiculousness of this argument, because they don't want to, because they're too busy pushing this false narrative to their own advantage. And I'm going to tell you, I've gotten so tired of it. Like because the majority of trans people, I don't have anything. I didn't take a poll. I can tell you from my experience, the people who I know who are trans, they agree. They go, yes, there's an advantage. They're not in denial about that.
Okay.
And I don't think that the majority of trans people are. That's my belief. I don't have it. Like I said, I didn't take a poll, but it's my belief that the majority of trans people don't, deny the fact that there's an advantage. So, to me, a trans athlete who wants to compete against biological, if you're a trans female and you want to compete against biological females and you want to say you don't have an advantage, I'm saying you're a liar. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. You're a liar and you're a cheater. You're more concerned about making a name for yourself. You're more concerned about winning something that you don't deserve to win. I didn't watch the Olympics this year because of that. Because of that, I just go. It's in the LGBTQ community, we're all about women's rights. We're all about sticking up for women, always believing women and protecting women. Except now, I guess it's okay to protect women unless a trans woman has her concerns and her rights trump that of a biological woman. And I go, how's that work actually? How do you not see, again, the hypocrisy
that's
in what you're
totally
doing?
what it is.
So, again, until they come out, until someone from that position can come out and debate a real biologist, a real scientist, and go, let's have a real debate. Let's put, and take your feelings out of it, because that's what they go to. Like they said, oh, well, this hurts other trans kids. How? Because you told them the truth, that hurts them. That's bull. It doesn't hurt them at all. It's okay, because there are other trans people out there and trans kids who know this to be the truth, and it doesn't hurt them. They're being realistic about it, and they're not taking who they are and using that to further themselves and with an advantage, and that's what pisses off the extremists, because that's what they're really in it for. They're not in it for trans people. They're in it for their own doing. So.
Right. I think that when I was thinking about the Olympics and in some of these opinions on trans men, trans women in the different sports, they seem to conflict with one another. So the point there was, if you had a trans woman competing against other women, it was fine. It was okay. But if you had a trans man that had not been through any big physical transition but was taking hormone therapy, that they also shouldn't was what I was told, compete with other women. So I thought, okay, well, why is that? Because of the hormonal differences that they're now taking artificially to alter their state.
Right.
And I thought, okay, well, I agree with you. If there's a woman on the soccer field, and I don't know her name either, but she's part of the Canadian soccer team. I want to say, gosh, it's escaping me. Part of the Canadian soccer team, which I believe won gold, and she is taking hormone therapy. Now, I don't know what the Olympic Committee thresholds are on what you can and can't have in your body, but some people naturally produce more or less of certain hormones. This person was taking an additional amount of this hormone, and so the advocate for the trans athletes was saying she shouldn't be competing against other biological women. And I thought, okay, I agree with you on that. But when it came to somebody that had been that had gone through puberty, that had lived a lot of their life as the other gender, and now we're making that transition, still had some natural hormones in their body. We're taking things to suppress it and so forth and so on, but that doesn't change what all of the rest of their biology is. And so for them to say, but it's okay for them to compete against biological women, but it's not okay for this biological woman to compete against other women because of the hormone differences, it was just a complete conflict
it's
of opinions.
Exactly. I agree. And the thing is like, look, women as a whole have a third of the testosterone levels that men have. Okay, that's a huge difference. for us to pretend like, oh, okay, well, they're going through some hormonal changes and stuff. When you use that 2/3 more testosterone to become the athlete that you are, I don't care if you stop taking. I don't care if you take hormones that reduces your testosterone levels or not. You've already had the advantage. As men, as we age, our testosterone levels drop. But oddly enough, as we get older, we don't lose much strength. If as long as we continue to work out, we can pretty much keep the strength that we had when we were in our 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done that. So even though my testosterone levels have dropped dramatically since I was 20 years old, I still have that same strength.
Mm-hmm.
So don't tell me that because someone has been taking hormones for
Mm-hmm.
a couple of years that their testosterone levels are lower now and so they don't have the same advantage. Yes, they do,
Mm-hmm.
because they trained as a man, and because they already have the muscle density, they already have the bone density, they already
Mm-hmm.
have the reflexes, they have all the advantages that men have physically because they went through puberty.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't just go away just because you lowered their testosterone levels or you raised their estrogen levels. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen. And we could stay on this particular topic forever, but that until, like I said, until their side can produce somebody who can say, here's what the research shows,
Mm-hmm.
but they can't because their research doesn't show that.
Mm-hmm.
And it always goes back to, oh well, it hurts trans people, it hurts trans kids or kids who are, no, you're using that to to pull on people's heartstrings, and it's not even real.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a nonsensical argument. So
Mm-hmm.
all right, so let's go to what's another, or did you have anything else you'd like to add to it before we?
No, I think moving on to something different will be
All right.
refreshing. We in listening to the postmodernism conversation that you had, it kind of went into, and I want to say it was Carl Kreisman that you had on when we were talking about, or y'all were talking about critical race theory, and it's like, oh, is this kind of a no-no for your average white guy to be talking about critical race theory? So I wanted to look up, what does it actually mean? Because there were differences of opinion out there of is it being taught in schools that, what our history has been as a nation, as it relates to slavery and things of that sort, and what do we think that that's doing systemically? And that's what I want to say the key difference is that it was, that the critical race theory ideology now is that it's all rooted in a systemic racism, which I won't necessarily say I agree with. I will say that being that I grew up in South Mississippi, one of the stereotypes there is that there's a lot more racial divide. There is, but there's also a camaraderie that you have. I grew up in a very small town. I'm talking 2,000 people, maybe 2,500, and went to public school. It was probably, I don't know, it wasn't a huge difference between, in being in South Mississippi, it wasn't a whole lot of different cultures. It was mainly black and white. So we didn't have a lot of Asian culture, didn't have a lot of Hispanic culture or anything of that sort, but mainly black and white. Friends with everybody pretty much everywhere. You had people that you played sports with, you were friends with them. Now, you didn't have all of the same common interest, but there was a level of respect that you had for your neighbor and somebody that was, lived in your community. And there wasn't like this hate that you think is out there. So when I think about what did I learn when I was in school, I mean, gosh, we learned about slavery. I had to memorize the Gettysburg Address when I was in 8th grade. It's a huge sense of accomplishment. But I've had to stand up in front of everybody and recite that. I mean, we learned about, I remember watching the movie Glory that had Matthew Broderick in it a long time ago, right? And this is in 7th grade. I'm watching that movie it was a class called Mississippi History. We're not just talking about, black culture. We're talking about Mississippi history, one of the heartbeat of the Confederacy. if you will, that really embraced some of the black culture. I mean, being one of the first, and I don't know if it was the only, but one of the first all black units, and that's what the movie Glory was about. Was a really great story and kind of heartbreaking to look at, but to see how these fellow Americans were fighting for the same causes. Now, was the Confederacy's cause as good? Possibly not. It's probably best that the Confederacy lost there, and so now you here we are today, but we had additional history classes that I remember going through, not just in middle school, but also into high school, where we did learn a lot about the things that made us who we are, the mistakes that we've made as a culture, how we've grown from it and continued to evolve, and how much more do we need to put in there from an academic curriculum to make sure that all of the cultures are being accurately represented. Is that a good way to say it? I mean,
Yeah, I think. All right, so I think the importance of this is that it's not enough for us to just say, okay, there was slavery, because that kind of literally whitewashes the whole thing, and so we go, oh well, we made a mistake. That's only a part of the problem. The rest of the problem is that we continued with that. So even after the Civil War, we had things that were put in place. We had the Jim Crow era. We had all the way up to the war on drugs. That was all based on people of color, or people in poverty, and to keep them in prison, to keep them basically slaves. It's all it was. It was slavery, and so. And there's many other things that happened in between there. There were when blacks started to become affluent, and how white men could come in and just run them out of town and take their stuff. These things happened.
Right.
The whole 20 acres or 40 acres and a mule. When their land was taken from them, and after it was given to them and it was taken from them, all this stuff continued to happen, and all this was systemic, and it still happens to today. And so there's a misunderstanding by a lot of white people, and I think it's because of the messaging. And I've asked this question several times to different people. If the messaging was different, would you change the message if you got the result you're looking for? So instead of saying white privilege, for instance, because most people who are white don't feel privileged, because they look, I work my ass off like everybody else. Where's my privilege? Because they don't understand what is meant by white privilege. They don't understand that your color doesn't hinder you from getting a job or anything else. Your color is an advantage. So what if we called it white advantage instead of white privilege? I think most white people would go, yeah, I could see that now. I could see how there is an advantage to being white. They would get it.
Yeah.
But I don't think people of color would like that, because then it would go, oh, that means they're better than us. But it doesn't. It means it's something that's rooted in a corrupt system, and that's what it means. And it needs to change. And I think white people could be on board and go, yes, that definitely needs to change. But it needs to change this way. You don't take things away from white people. You give things or make it so that people of color have the same thing that you have, and we all have together.
Right,
And
level the playing field.
Right, level the playing field. But that doesn't mean, kicking our feet out from underneath of us or pulling the rug out from underneath the white people. It means lifting people of color up to where they're at the same level that we're at. And that's how we handle that situation. Unfortunately, there are people out there, and I find this I find it in every group. There are people out there who aren't looking for equality. They're looking for revenge, and it's not the same thing. There are people out there who want white people to feel guilty. It's like, I'm sorry, I have a hard time feeling guilty of something I didn't participate in and I don't agree with, and I've been a staunch, proponent of, or
Against,
against for, my whole life.
Right.
So when someone tells me that that I'm not an ally because they don't believe in allies, and I should apologize, and I'm going, look, I'm the first one to apologize for anything I do wrong, but I'm not going to apologize for something I didn't do wrong. And if you don't get that, that's on you. But if you're looking to go, white people bad, black people good, it's no different than when women do the whole men are bad, women are good,
Right.
or gay people go gay people good, straight people bad. It's all bullshit and it's all nonsense. And I go, and there's this woman, and I told this story before, who wanted to come on my show, and she does this diversity training to corporations and stuff, and her whole thing is to make people, white people, feel uncomfortable and to write a letter of apology. And I go, well, I'd love to have you on the show and discuss this because I'd like to know where you're coming from. But just be aware that I'm going to ask questions and I'm going to push back because I don't necessarily agree with your stance, but I would like to have a discussion about it. And she wrote back and said, no. She didn't want to be challenged.
Yeah.
And I go, well, my show's not a platform for you to just, tell everybody what your points are. And she goes, well, if you're worried about, appeasing white people, I go, that's not what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
What it's about is getting to the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is you just want to push your narrative and make white people feel bad for something that they don't even believe in and they don't feel like they're a part of. And and I said, but I'll tell you what, I'll be happy to write you an apology letter for being white,
Mm-hmm.
for something I never participated in, as soon as you write me an apology letter for being straight, since I'm gay and what straight people have done to gay people over the years. So you send me that letter, and I'll promise you I'll get one right out to you as well. And of course, she didn't want to hear that
Right.
because it's ridiculous. It would be ridiculous for gay people to make straight people write an apology letter, especially if these straight people are advocates and have been allies of
And
ours.
there's been
and
terrible things that have happened to the gay community.
There have been, but it's not by straight. It was by some straight people.
Sure.
Just like if you look at the number of white people who actually owned slaves, it's a very, very small percentage,
Mm-hmm.
and yet the whole race of white people are going to be blamed for it.
Mm-hmm.
It would be just as silly as blaming all straight people for the things that were done against gay people.
Mm-hmm.
It was only a small percentage of people who acted that way, and so it's just such a ridiculous argument. I just don't have the wherewithal to.
Well, I like to embrace our differences. I also like to embrace our similarities and not focus so much on the differences.
Right.
And I feel like focusing so much on the differences, especially if we're talking about kids that are learning different things in school, if you're focusing so much on the differences, then that's all they're going to see. I'll tell you this, my 9-year-old, one of her best friends is a mixed race little girl, but I mean she's darker skinned. And the first time she ever met the little girl, they were probably only, I don't know, 4 years old or something. And she said, I love Harper's hair and her skin. It looks so pretty. And I thought, through the eyes of a child, how beautiful is that hair? Like, I love your hair. I love your skin. It's so pretty.
Right.
And we went to the store or something like that, and she was gonna use some of her chore money that she had made to buy like a new Barbie. And I'm not making this up. She picked the one off that was the black Barbie, and she's like, "This one looks just like Harper. I want that one." And I was like, "Yes, we're doing something right as parents."
Exactly.
Because she's looking at this as, that's a beautiful doll right there. I don't just need to have the white blonde-headed doll.
Right.
I want the one that looks like my friend. And for us to be able to say, okay, we're embracing our differences, but we're not focusing so much on them that it becomes a distraction, then I think we can learn so much from just looking, like, get out of our own way and look at what innocence can show you.
I like something. I had a gentleman on my show. His name is A.N.T. Blair,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, racism, or he goes, color is made up, and and I agree with him. He said, imagine if we took color out of everything. Imagine if when we fill out something, we don't fill out what our race is. Why do you need to know what our race is?
Yeah.
There is no need for it. And I agree with him 100%. I go, we just should get rid of it. It doesn't matter.
I listened to that show, and you said, "What if we just start checking other?" And I was like,
Right.
"Yes,
Exactly.
yes. Why can't we just check other?"
Exactly, because it's just a ridiculous thing that we have to differentiate people, like that, as if that has any bearing whatsoever, and it shouldn't.
Yeah.
And so in this whole nonsense of, oh well, we have to, by saying that you're black or you're Hispanic or whatever, then the government looks at that and goes, okay, well we give credit to these companies. Well, don't. Stop doing that, because because you're just encouraging this behavior to continue with this divide. Just let them hire people based off of
Merit.
their merit, exactly, and that's the way it should be, and not ask what color someone is or how old someone is or anything else. It's just like, can they do the job or can't they?
Yeah, so I can't remember the guy's name. I should have done more homework on this. Jordan something or another. He's like an English psychologist. You've probably heard his name.
Jordan Peterson?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's Canadian.
He can be considered a jerk to a lot of people, but every now and again he does have a little nugget of wisdom. And one of the things he said had to do with, making sure that we weren't just checking the boxes to fill certain things, you know. And the example that he used had to do with, architects. And the argument was that, 50% of the architects should be women, 50% of the architects should be men. And he said, well, no, that's BS, because naturally you may have more men that
have an interest
in pursuing and following this. So if you've got, 80% of the people following this are men, and this is just hypothetical numbers I'm making up, and 20% are women, and then so you've got 100 people that out of this pool that have gone through this program and they want to be architects. And then you say, okay, let's take the top 50 in the class, and you're going to go on to be architects. Well, there's going to probably be a couple of women in the top 50, but are all 20 of the 100 that are in that pool going to be in the top 50? It's possible. It's probably not that probable when you look at the distribution of how many people we've got there. So to be able to say we're going to set the deck to where it has to be this and this, that's completely unfair to all of the candidates at that point in time. And you may end up having subpar results because now you've put somebody that maybe was not in the top tier of their whatever it is that they're pursuing into a position of now they're doing that, and it was all because of we need to check this box.
Right.
So if we're checking boxes for race and age and all this kind of thing, things that you can't even ask in an interview. You can't ask somebody their age. You can't ask them anything really these days. If you saw a woman that was pregnant, clearly pregnant in the interview, you cannot ask her if she's pregnant, or can't really engage in any conversation about that because it would be perceived as discriminating against them. So if we can't do those things, why is it on the form?
Right, exactly. And see, and here's another thing too. Jordan B. Peterson, some people think, oh, he's a jerk or that he's right wing, and he's not. He's again very much like Joe Rogan in that he doesn't pick a side. Now, oftentimes he's on the right side because of how he sees things. And I don't always agree with him, but I respect him because I know how he got there.
Yeah.
I would love to debate him sometimes because I know I would go and he would listen. I guarantee you he would listen, and he would say, "Oh, I didn't consider that," because I've heard him say that before. I've heard him say, "I did not consider that," and changed his thought on it because he really is looking for the truth. And yet the people on the left go crazy because he makes statements like what you just said, which makes absolute sense, but they don't like that. They don't want common sense. And it's not just the left. The right is the same way when there's statements made against their beliefs, and they don't want to hear it either. It's both sides are hypocritical. But Jordan B. Peterson does his best to just go, what do the facts show us? And that's the side that he's on, regardless of where that puts him. And so he's, he's ridiculed just like Joe Rogan is. He happens to be, quite a bit more intelligent than Joe Rogan or even myself. But I do see, that he's a genuine actor in this. Like, he's not someone that you have to question.
I would agree with you. He doesn't seem to have some sort of a bias or underlying motivation that questions.
He's going to have a bias, but that's because we all do. He's a straight man who's white, and so he's going to have certain biases. But he's done, I think, what he feels, he's done the best he can to overcome those biases. And I think in most cases he has. Not in all, but I think in most cases he has. And the point I'd like to make about that is he is, more than anybody else I've ever seen, he's very particular, very like specific about what he says. Like, his language is every word is in there because it belongs in there.
Right.
And here's why: because he knows people are going to go back and go, "Oh, you said,"
pick it apart.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, that's not what I said. This is what I said." And that's why his language is very specific. And yet you still find people trying to say, "Oh, well, Jordan B. Peterson believes this," or "Jordan B. Peterson said that." And when you go back, you find out that's not what he said, and that's not what he believes. But you don't like what he said, and you want to push you want to discredit him. So you take what he said and you take it out of context, or anything that you can do to try to discredit him, because it goes against what your belief is. And so I have all the respect in the world for the guy. I just, again, I don't agree with him on everything, but I don't agree with everything on Joe Rogan either. But I respect them both because these are genuine people who are good faith actors, and they're not grifters. They don't just say things to appeal to a base of their listeners. They say what they believe is to be true. And if it's not, they will go back and go, "I was wrong, and here's what the truth is." Very few people are willing to do that.
I think so. It kind of reminds me of, what is the guy's name on Fox News that is just ridiculous?
Tucker Carlson.
Tucker.
Yeah.
So Tucker. So this is an old clip, and it had Jon Stewart.
Yeah, John.
He brought on Tucker Carlson, and he was young at the time,
Right?
And some other fella from another news station, and the whole premise that they had, we're gonna got a cool premise here, was we're gonna have these two highly differing opinionated people from different networks come on and debate. And Jon Stewart said, "I think both of you are terrible."
Yeah.
And basically told them how he thought that what they did was so disingenuous that he didn't think that anything that they had to say had any value because of the motivations that were generating it in the first place.
Right.
So when you say, "Is this person a grifter? Is that person is genuine?" That's what I always look at is how genuine does this person sound? Do they believe what they're saying? Are they just repeating what they've heard 1,000 times? And back to what we started with, of this whole being in the middle thing. Sometimes it's hard to get out of the middle because you hear this side and you go, "That guy's an idiot." You hear this side and you go, "That guy's an idiot."
Right. Because they're both being disingenuous.
Yeah.
They're just, again, they're pushing a narrative that they know their base wants to hear, and that's all. And they're grifters. You used the exact word. And that one wasn't Carlson. That was actually Hannity and Combs that he was talking about. Sean Hannity is.
Well, he's just as bad.
Oh, he is. He's if not worse. Honestly, he doesn't have the numbers that Tucker Carlson. But see, that's the thing. Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly. They're all bullshitters. They all know they're full of shit, and they don't care. Because they're banking. They're making so much money by selling out to this base that will believe anything they say, because that's what they want to hear, and they know that, so they just stick to it, even though they know it's not true. And that's, I just have no respect for people like that. And on a certain level, Rachel Maddow. She's the same way. I don't think she's as bad as they are, but she certainly has done the same thing.
I think it's the way they deliver the information sometimes is it. I don't know. I guess you have to deliver it in a certain gusto, if you will, to really get your point across. But I think sometimes the delivery can it. You've heard the phrase before. It's not what you say, but it's how you say it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I get gets me a bad taste from a lot of the networks.
Right. Well, unfortunately, that might be great for entertainment, but for finding the truth, it's what you say.
Yeah.
And they know what they're saying is BS.
Yeah.
And they say it anyway.
When did this term news entertainment come out? I heard that and I was like,
Well,
news
Fox,
entertainment.
okay, so Fox was going to get sued, and Fox said, "Oh, well, this isn't news; it's news entertainment," because they knew, because again, everything they were saying was BS, and so they were going to be sued for it because they were just lying. They were continually lying, and so they're saying, "Oh, well, this is just entertainment." So we're not held under the same the same principles as a news agency that's supposed to just report the news. So we can take liberties with the truth if we choose to, and that's what they've done basically.
Yeah.
So that's where it came about. All right, so let's move on to another topic.
Okay. I mean, if there's anything specific direction that you want to take it, one of the ones that we kind of talked about in passing had to do with corporations and kind of where some of their allegiances were, and that they're so interested in their own prosper that they will absolutely put the employees and the people and the culture second. And not just second, sometimes it's way down the list. And I experienced this in my career. I won't name them for professional integrity's sake,
Right.
but it's a big name firm that we've seen in the news before, and to be able to see how they navigate certain, and not just them, lots of companies out there navigate certain events that happen in our nation, and how they respond to it, and how the employees are affected by it is pretty disgusting. I mean, during COVID, we saw a lot of people lose their job, where the company said, "Oh, well, no one's going to lose their job." Well, they did, and then they turned around and took massive amounts of funds and donated it to COVID relief. And I'm going, that's cool that you're donating to this, but you just fired 100,000 people, whatever
Right.
the number is. And you go, I feel like maybe we should have just taken care of our people first before we tried to do these other things. But what was that going to help them with? Gigantic tax incentives. It's going to make them look good. It's going to be all about their image. And who is getting hurt by that? And when it ends up hurting the people, that's when it really changes my opinion on the company. So if you look at companies like a Starbucks, I'm sure that they've got something that might be negative about them, but for the most part, they're a model to follow by a lot of companies out there because of how they treat their employees. The people want to be there.
Right.
They pay them good wages. They embrace a lot of the differences that people have. So they're a little bit more not trendy. What's the word that you would use there? Progressive. They're
Right.
progressive, very progressive. And I think that there's a value to that. And I think that a lot of companies should be able to look at them and say, hey, you don't have to just keep sharpening the pencil until there's nothing, you're down to a nub. Because that is going to catch up with you at some point in time.
Right.
And let's look at a company over here that started as something very small, but because of the way that they were building it kind of organically with a really good foundation. I mean, they fixed that tennis grip early,
Right.
right? And then they became fantastic at it. That, why can't we see similar philosophies from a lot of these other firms out there?
I'll tell you exactly why. Because there's an abundance of workers, and until that switch, it's all about supply and demand.
Mm-hmm.
Which I have the answer to that, but we'll never implement in this country. But if you want to know whether a company is a good company to work for or not, ask the employees. You will get people like who work at Starbucks who go, I love working for this company. You'll get people who work at Costco going, I love to work for Costco because they treat their employees right. They take care of their employees. It's not all about, uh, the what's the word I'm looking for? You're the expert in this area. The investor.
Okay, yeah.
The the people who are making money from the company. What is wrong with me today?
I mean, like the board members.
The board members, stockholders.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's not all about the stockholders and how much and how much they can get back to the stockholders. It's about, hey, we're going to take care of our people, and it can be done because Jack Ma, with Alibaba, has come out and said, if you don't like it, go invest somewhere else. In fact, I think who's the CEO? Is it Tim Cook who's CEO of Star? No, who's this?
I don't know the Starbucks CEO off the top of my head.
Yeah, he was going to run for president. I can't remember his name. Anyway,
Dwayne Johnson.
No, but he said the same thing. He said, "Look, if you don't like it, if you don't think your dividends are enough, then go elsewhere, invest elsewhere." Because he could say, "Look, we're going to take care of our people," and that's what a good company should do. But then you have companies like Target who just talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. They'll pretend to be progressive because it's advantageous. It makes them money to be progressive, or at least to appear progressive. But behind the doors, when no one's looking, they're doing things that progressive companies wouldn't do. And for instance, they backed this guy who was running for some, I want to say, senator of certain state, and they were backing him because he was willing to go to Target and say, look, I'll give you a tax break if I get elected. We'll get you in there, and because that's where they wanted to put their new headquarters or something. But this guy was totally like anti-LGBTQ. Like he's even come out and said that they should be stoned to death. This kind of nonsense.
Wow. And
Target backed him. Why? You supposedly love LGBTQ people. You sell rainbow everything come the month of June, and that you're supposed to be inclusive and all this stuff. But then you back somebody just because he's going to save you some money.
You would think this day and age that companies would be smart enough to vet these
people.
Well,
no. They weren't unaware of his stance. They knew exactly where he hit, but they wanted to save money. The money came first.
Yeah.
That's what, and so I go. Target's no different. So quit with the whole BS act that you care about people, because you really don't. You only care about them when it can be profitable. That's it. Show that you care about them, and they'll come buy stuff from your store because you supposedly care, but you don't. And so I don't have any respect for people again, or for corporations like that. And as far as their workers and doing the right thing by their workers and fighting against minimum wage and basically buying off our politicians to make sure that continues. It's just,
it reminds me of a Zig Ziglar quote, and it's not an oversimplification, I don't think, but he said something to the tune of, help a lot of people get what they want, and you'll get what you want.
Right.
And I had to remind myself this. I'm in the financial services world. That's what I do for a living. And as a young guy in the financial services world, I started there about 10 or 11 years ago, you find out real quick how easy it would be to do something not in the best interest of your client. And then you really have to check yourself and say, what kind of person am I going to be? Am I going to be someone of integrity, or am I going to be someone that lets the dollar direct me?
Right.
And so I'm going to say I've always done the right thing, regardless of which one was going to help me out. And when you're brand new in this business, it's literally, it's really tough to be able to build your business to a point that is sustainable. And to be able to make those tough decisions to say, hey, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to help people get what they want. And then ultimately, that's going to get me where I want to be down the road. But I feel like so many people lay down the second that there's any sort of a difficulty, and they say, well, here's the easy way out.
Right.
and I can take advantage of this situation, this person, this whatever it is, and get something that is not going to be lasting. It's going to just be, it might be tangible, but it's going to be, it's got a time frame to it. It's going to run out, and you're going to continue to enable this type of behavior in yourself and really change who you are. So I see this in big companies because I go, did they start out with different intentions, and then all of a sudden their focus got turned in a different direction, and this no longer was important to them, and this was the only thing that mattered?
Right. Well, I'll quote a dear friend of mine, and or at least I consider him a friend, Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, who I've had on the show a couple of times. He wrote the book Think and Grow Rich: A Black Choice and What Makes the Great Great, and a couple other bestsellers that he's had over the years. And he said on the show, he said, never, ever, ever compromise your integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what happens. People compromise their integrity, and you might get some short-term gain. You might become wealthy because of these choices that you made that you know you shouldn't have done, and personally profited from them.
Mm-hmm.
But at what cost?
Yeah.
At the cost of your integrity, to where you look in the mirror. And I'm going to tell you, if you can look in the mirror and you're okay with it, then you weren't a good person to begin with. You know,
Wow,
that's what
yeah,
it comes down to.
That's deep too.
But so. Yeah, I guess if you're being honest with yourself and you're okay with being a douchebag, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
do what you got to do.
I read a quote, and it said something like, integrity is doing the right thing when you don't think anybody's watching.
Right, exactly.
And so, there's been times before where, he says, hey, I saw what you did the other day. And you're like, oh, really? Oh, okay. I guess I wasn't paying attention to who was around or who was watching. But it's something that I definitely see with my kids, and they will stick you. Ooh, they will tell you in a heartbeat. They're like, well, Daddy, you did this the other day. And I'm like, ooh,
yeah,
I did. You kind of got me there. And so, we have to continually work on ourselves. And, that's one of the things that I've really just loved as being a parent, is that it takes the focus not so much off of me, but it puts a different spotlight on me. It's not, hey, everybody look at me. It's my kids are looking at me, because that's just naturally what's going to happen. And then if I start to notice different things in them, and I have to reflect back on myself and go,
right.
Oh yeah, that's on me.
And that's important, because you have to ask yourself this, and it's very easy for me to sit here because I haven't been in that position. But for instance, you take someone like Dave Rubin, and Dave Rubin's has his own podcast. He's a gay man who went from being a liberal to a conservative, and he just says stuff out of his butt that he knows is BS, and he says it anyway, because he got bankrolled by a conservative who bankrolled him, and he took the money and ran with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I go, it's easy for me to criticize him,
Mm-hmm.
because I go, you sold out. And you just completely compromised your integrity to where you have no standing with me whatsoever. Him and Milo Yiannopoulos, they're grifters. They just say and do anything to make a buck.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask myself, if someone came to me and said, Kurt, we'll give you $10 million, $20 million, whatever it might be, but I want you to change your position on things, would I do that? And that's a tough question, because
it's a really hard question when you really start to throw some big numbers at it.
Yeah, because now I got to go, would I ever do it? And if I did, where is that number at? It's like, I'll do it for $20 million, but not $10 million.
Yeah.
It's like, so my integrity is worth $20 million,
Yeah.
but it's not, or $10 million, but not worth $20 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, here's how I have to look at it. Would I be able to look at myself in the mirror? Now, it's funny, because when you give this some serious thought, you go, okay, well, what's the worst that would happen?
Mm-hmm.
If I change my position? You know what? If people believe that, it's on them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to hear the truth anymore. I've said this before. I don't know how Bernie Sanders continues to fight for the people when they're too damn stupid to fight with him, and they
Mm-hmm.
fight against him.
Mm-hmm.
I would have said, you know what? You people don't deserve me. You go, screw you. You want to be poor, and you don't want minimum wage. You don't want health care. You don't want free college. You know what? All right, to go vote for everyone else. I'm done with you people because you're not smart enough to realize I've been fighting for you my whole life. You know, when I talked to, I forget who it was, the gentleman, we were talking about how the older black people in the South, especially South Carolina, voted for Biden instead of Bernie. Biden lied about being in the civil rights movement. He wasn't. Bernie was arrested. He was there. He was with them, fighting with them, and yet they voted for Biden because they just, for whatever reason, I don't want to even guess, but I go, then you deserve what you get. Honestly, like why should he even care anymore? And so I could take that route and go, why should I care anymore? They're not listening. They're not, they're just going to believe what they want to believe, and and I'll have $20 million in my bank account. But when it comes down to it, I know that I would. Some people go, well, you might not be able to look at yourself in the mirror, as far as that goes, but $20 million in your bank, you don't.
I'll
need
pay
to
someone.
Right?
I'll pay someone to look in the mirror for me.
Exactly. And so.
No, I wouldn't do that.
So it would, when you said like about your children, it's not just about you. It's about the people in your life who look at you in a certain light, and you destroy that light because you sold out. Your kids, what could they ever think about their father?
Yeah. And
how would they feel about that? Your wife. How about your friends? Going, Kyle's an upstanding guy, and then one day you sell out, and they go, wow, I never ever thought of all people he would sell out. And I think that's what would definitely prevent me from doing it, is because I've worked very hard in being who I am so that people can go, I know him, he's a man of honor and integrity. And to destroy that over something like money, to me, it's not worth it. And I know that's easy to say because no one's offered me $20 million, but I really don't believe I would take it because I go, what's it going to get me? It's not going to buy me happiness. I can tell you that, because if I sell out and I destroy my honor and integrity, there's nothing that's going to make me happy from that point. So, it's something.
You can
to
only
think
buy
about.
so many jet skis, Kurt.
Yeah, especially since I don't really use them. But like, you're right. It's like, what would I do? I'd travel around the world. Well, I already travel around. I mean, I don't travel around the world on a regular basis, but I've been to many places in the world, and I'll continue to go. I may not go with the frequency I'd like to go, but so I have 20 million, so now I can travel as much as I want. Well, at some point you get tired of traveling, you're going to come home and go, oh, well, I'm done traveling because I did it so much. It's like going to Disney World. It's like you can only go to Disney World so much until it becomes old hat, and you go, yeah, I don't want to go there anymore. Let's wait about 5 years before we go again. So.
But then when you get back and you're not doing all this traveling and you're looking around and you're going, where's all my friends and family that don't want to have anything to do with you anymore because of the changes that you made and this, that, and the other. What's the most important thing at the end of the day?
Right. And the only people who will want to have anything to do with you are the ones that think they can get something off of you.
Yeah.
So you're right. Who would want to live that kind of life? And unfortunately, there's quite a few.
I mean, isn't there I want to say one of the big rap moguls cut his daughter off that I don't think he had been present in her life, so it's not like he abandoned them when she was young. I don't think he had ever been present in her life, but because he was the father of her, he had been offering for like some substantial financial support, and finally said, you know what, you're an adult, you've gotten enough from me, let's just kind of cut ties and move on. And a lot of people are giving him a hard time over that, saying like, you're the father, and it's like, well, father is not just biology.
Right.
Father is a lot more than that. I mean, I know plenty of people that have been adopted, and the men that were the fathers in their life are so much more of a father than a ton of deadbeat biological dads out there. So it really all has to do with, what your relationship consists of. If all the relationship consists of is just something like money,
right?
Well, then that doesn't have any real tangible value to it.
It doesn't. It's like, okay, he's the father. He's not their bank.
Right.
So there's a difference. And if you look at me as just as a bank,
you're just anybody else at that point.
Right, exactly. So, and then your daughter is no different than those leeches who come around when you have money and then are gone as soon as you're out of money. They're just, that's all they're there for, is their own profit. So,
Mm-hmm.
all right. Any other topics you'd like to discuss?
We covered a lot today.
We
If
did.
there's ever an opportunity to come back on, I'd be more than happy to. And
Yeah, because we've done 2 hours, but again, yeah, there's plenty of topics, and I think the topics that you chose today are topics that a lot of people have on their mind, and I hope with us discussing it today that it gave some people a lot of some clarity and help in how to see these things, regardless of what side they're on.
Mhm.
And
if it didn't give them clarity, because I don't necessarily think I gave a lot of strong opinions on anything or the other, but maybe it just made them think.
well, that you came up with some really good questions, and that's the thing. It's like, because regardless, because sometimes when you're on one side or the other, you don't think of the questions that are pertain to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you did is you asked questions that pertain to both sides of the matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives people pause to think about those things and answer those questions for themselves. And again, the things that they hear you say or me say, I'll say it again. I've given these topics that we've talked about today a great deal of thought, and I've come to the conclusions that I have because I have given it a great deal of thought. I've done research when it's been required. I've either lived through it or had experience with these things, and that's why I'm where I'm at. But that doesn't mean you take my word as gospel truth.
Mm-hmm.
Check and see if the things I say or the things that you said, see if those things hold water to you. If not, challenge them. Challenge me.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem with people challenging me. And I'm like you. If I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to admit it. I'll go, I'm wrong. I don't like to admit it, but I will. So, and that's why I very seldom speak up about anything unless I know what I'm talking about. And if I do, then I will preface it. This is just an opinion. This is not.
Sure.
I'm not stating this is fact. This is my opinion. And my best friend will ask me questions all the time because I'm quite a bit older than him. And so he refers to me about things, and sometimes he'll go, why does this do this and this and this? And I'll go, I don't know. I don't. And I'm not gonna pretend to know
Mm-hmm.
to try to impress him or anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I go, I don't know, but we can find out, and that's what I'd like to, how I do things is like, if I don't know something, and if it's important enough for me I want to know, then I'll go find the answer to it. And I think that would be benefit us as a society if we all did that. And one last thing I wanted to say, because you had brought it up or jogged my memory, is like when we were talking about people and their 15 minutes of fame and acting out like a fool to get that attention that they want. It's important that people understand that you're never going to get people to look at reason if you're being unreasonable.
Mm.
So if you're screaming at me and going, how can you believe trans athletes are the same as biological, and I'm screaming at you about this, you're going to go, probably not going to hear anything I say. You're just going to be thinking, God, what a jackass.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're going to think.
It's like yelling "calm down" at someone.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Calm down. It's like, wait a minute, but you're yelling at me. This doesn't work.
Exactly. So if you want to get the message across, it is important in how you deliver that message, and don't be upset with people if they don't get your message because you're screaming at them. Because most of us don't respond well when we're being screamed at.
Yeah.
We either shut down and don't say anything, or we scream back.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very seldom do we ever sit back and go, "Oh, I never thought of that."
Yeah. So we need more of that. Is the bottom line? Is we need more people saying, I'm here to listen. I'm here to learn, and it not be a trap. I feel like a lot of times when you say to a group of people, "Yeah, I'm here to listen. I'm here to learn. I want to know. I want to help myself have a better understanding," that there's an immediate dismissal of that because they don't believe you. They don't believe that that's what you're there for. They believe that you're there in a conflicting way.
Right, because in many cases that's exactly what it is. There's so many fake people out there who will seem sincere and saying something like that, and they have no intentions of learning anything. They're there to push their narrative,
right?
And and basically disarm you so you'll be open to what they have to say, but they're not open to what you have to say.
Right.
And so you're right. It's unfortunate, but it's not easy navigating yourself through this crazy little world of ours, but it can be done with some effort. So.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle, listen, thank you. I enjoyed having you on the show. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm so I'm so glad to have at least one fan out there.
I appreciate you bringing me on too. I mean, when we first started talking, had no idea that I was going to get invited onto the show. That certainly wasn't my motivation or intention or anything of that sort. But I found your show entertaining. I found it refreshing. I found it as something that was different. And I really embraced something that was different because I felt like everything else that we had out there available to us was stale. And so this had some life to it, and I wanted to not so much be a part of it. I mean, it's really cool that I get to be a part of it today, but I wanted to dive in to see what are the different subjects that I'm going to hear that got me coming back every week, because it wasn't just around this subject or that subject.
Right.
I'd tune in and I'd kind of scroll through the different things. I'd be like, I don't know what that's about. Click it, listen to it, and go, hey, this is pretty neat. I do love hearing a subject matter expert. So, I realize to whoever's listening, I'm a nobody in any specific subject matter area, but, there's a lot of us out there that I think are like me.
Right, there are, and I assure you, there's a lot of people out there who are going to resonate with you and the things that you said, and go, yeah, that's what I think too. Yeah, that's what I've been thinking, or I thought that as well. And I promise you brought up points that everybody else out there has thought about. And again, not that to put the weight of everybody on your shoulders, like you speak for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
but you certainly, I guarantee you, have spoken for many people out there who've had questions like the ones you've asked today, and made points that others think about just like you do. So.
Yeah.
And so I want to do these type of shows, and I've done them in the past, and I'll continue to do them because I think everybody deserves a voice. Just because you're not an expert or because you're not a celebrity or whatever yet exactly doesn't mean you don't have a right to have your voice heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just as important that those of us who live in the real world, that our voice is heard as much as anybody else's who may be a celebrity or something of that nature,
Mm-hmm.
because we're living life. We live
Mm-hmm.
the life, and we're not. Nobody can say that we live in a bubble.
Yeah.
So
it's like what makes George Clooney's opinion more important than mine?
it doesn't.
Just because he's a celebrity.
But I will say this. I will say this. It doesn't. But he has an opinion as well, and lots of people want to shut down celebrities, and I find this always one of the grifts that these guys do. Like Tucker Carlson will go, well, who's George Clooney? He's this multimillionaire and he's an actor and he doesn't speak for the common or common people. But then he'll have Ted Nugent on, who completely.
Yeah, totally.
You're like,
Yeah.
oh, Ted Nugent's the greatest singer. He's like, oh, wait, you mean the singer, celebrity?
He's just a rock guitar guy.
Right. Yeah, who likes archery. It's like, and he doesn't have a brain cell in his head, But hey, he's all of a sudden, we want to hear his opinion.
We're all people.
Right. So anyway, but listen, thank you very much. I hope that I continue to do the show in a way that you appreciate it, and others. And they say you only need 1,000 true fans. I got 999 more to go. So.
All right. Well, you actually got 2 more, because my girls were exposed to listening to the podcast in the car on a very long road trip that we had to take. And every time the intro and exit of the show came on, I didn't skip it because they love the theme song. So I'll have to I'll take a video and send it to you of them dancing and kind of whatever to the theme song.
That would be very cool.
Yeah.
We'd love that. We'll put that on Instagram. That would be great.
Very good.
All right. Well, folks, thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show with Kyle. And again, thank you, Kyle, for being on the show. So until next time, be safe, take care. And don't be like Joe Rogan, even though I love him. Wear your mask.
The Powers Project.